Kalen DeBoer has made a coaching hire. We kind of saw it coming, and it should raise expectations in Tuscaloosa.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in this, the greatest sport on planet Earth. This episode brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Luke Robinson of Locked On Alabama is here once again. Why is Ohio State losing their staff? I actually don't have that answer, but I know someone who does, and Matt Rhule suggests something that sounds crazy right until you realize that it's not. Here's something that isn't crazy, Luke. Ryan Grubb has been hired as Alabama's offensive coordinator. This was supposed to happen last year. He was actually hired to be the OC and decided, actually, I want to stay in Seattle and try this NFL thing. We got an opportunity here. Apparently, it didn't work out as well as my Seahawks were hoping. I thought he was pretty darn good, but the reason I say the expectation should be really high here, Luke, is because, number one, it's Alabama, but number two, each of the last 3 seasons at 2 different stops that are of a lower caliber than, Alabama from a football standpoint, that DeBoer and Grubb have been together, they've won double-digit games, and I think that's where Alabama fans should be looking now that DeBoer has probably the most important assistant coach with him.
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me. But secondly, Alabama fans are always looking for double-digit wins, and they just didn't happen this year. It broke a pretty long streak ever since 2008 of having double-digit wins. So kind of strange for Alabama fans not to have at least 10 wins. But they will be looking for them next year. I can assure you of that, despite the fact that the schedule is incredibly arduous. I mean, almost Herculean. It is, you got FSU, you got Wisconsin, you've got at Georgia, at Auburn, which, of course, Nick Saban himself said is haunted. You've got LSU on the docket, who a lot of people are picking to do some things in the college football playoff, in South Carolina, all those things. But you know what? I think this is a great situation for Ryan Grubb. First of all, look, I've been a staunch defender of all things Jalen Milroe for a long time, right up until about the Oklahoma game when I realized, okay, maybe it isn't as peachy as I thought. But I think that Jalen Milroe should go down as a celebrated quarterback, right? I do think he did a lot of good things. People forget he beat Georgia twice. He won an SEC title. But he was also, I should say, Kalen DeBoer was handicapped or at least handcuffed to Jalen Milroe. I don't think he could have really legitimately made a move. Now, some people will say, well, he's getting paid a bunch of money. That's what he should do, is make the tough calls like that. But I think in that moment, in this particular season, when there's so much turnover and you're taking over for a legend of all legends, and you've got a guy in Jalen Milroe who's been a great human being, a fantastic ambassador for your program, I don't think it made a lot of sense to actually make a move, even after the Oklahoma game, which frankly was just awful. There's no other way to say it. And I think Kalen DeBoer, again, was a little bit handicapped in the sense that he wasn't able to do maybe what he wanted to do with the quarterback. I'm not saying he would have made a change. I'm just saying there was really no way to do it. Well, now Ryan Grubb's going to come in, and he's going to have his pick of a Ty Simpson who's experienced, who's been at Alabama for a while, knows the SEC landscape. He's gotten to play a little bit, not in a lot of meaningful snaps, but he's gotten to play, and he's been in the SEC a while. Then he's also got Austin Mack, the one guy that Grubb and Kalen DeBoer probably know the best since they recruited him in Washington. And then he also has Keelan Russell, who's coming in as what some sites now have as the number 1 prospect in the country. He won the Gatorade National Player of the Year. He looks like just a wonderkind, and I don't use that term lightly because I'm not 100% sure what it means. But I'm going to say that he's a fantastic quarterback. And if you're looking at all 3 of those quarterbacks, my bet is all 3 of them, by the time their careers are done, will be thought of as more accurate than Jalen Milroe. They may not be better than Jalen Milroe. They certainly can't run as well as he can, but they'll probably be more accurate, which I think is the one thing that was lacking in this offense last year.
I think the Grubb move makes so much sense because of the success that they've had, and also, as you alluded to, what happened at the quarterback position this past year, because their track record with Jake Haener and Michael Penix is just incredible. And I think Kalen DeBoer is a really good coach. I've been high on him ever since he went down to Alabama, and certainly people ask questions, and he did not answer those decisively with the season they had this year. But I think that Grubb was the most important guy on staff. And there are a lot of coaches over the years that lose one guy and they're not the same. And you kind of look back and go, boy, I don't know that it's the same without him there. And this is a guy who's going to be the play caller. I mean, DeBoer wasn't calling plays last season. That still is something that came from up top. But this is where I think the full promise of this coaching staff comes to fruition. I don't know that it all materializes this year, but a guy with a proven quarterback track record like Ryan Grubb, from a recruiting standpoint, he and DeBoer didn't light the world on fire while they were at Washington. It's not what they were known for, but I don't think that matters a whole lot right now with the guys Alabama has on the roster and the quarterback specifically they have on the roster.
Yeah, and look, Washington, again, no offense to anybody who pulls for Washington listening to this. Washington historically has never recruited as well as Alabama historically. Maybe a few years they have had better classes in some certain periods of roughness for Alabama, but for the most part, Alabama's always recruited better because, frankly, the state of Alabama and the states surrounding Alabama generally crank out more talent. Now, California is its own animal and a little different, but the state of Alabama, state of Mississippi, Tennessee, Florida, Georgia, all those, Louisiana, all those that Alabama's very near, and now their recruiting reach goes into Texas all the way into California. So I think that, again, and Alabama, people keep talking about, was DeBoer a great recruiter? He finished with somewhere between the number 2 and number 4 class, depending on what service you look at. I mean, that's pretty awesome. I mean, again, no, it's not a Nick Saban, finish number 1 every year thing, but it's pretty doggone awesome. And quite frankly, Keelan Russell, keep going back to this kid, he is now rated the number 1 prospect Alabama's ever signed. And as long as people have been keeping up with rankings, he's the highest ranked of all those. He's higher than Bryce Young, higher than Andre Smith. For those of you who are a little bit older, he's a dude. So I feel like this is a great move for Alabama. Nick Sheridan is going to continue to be on staff, apparently, which I think is another good thing. Jamarcus Shepard will still be there. He was co-OC last year, and I think that may have been sort of in name only, perhaps, and sort of a title boost and maybe a bit of a pay boost too. But I think this is a fantastic move. Look, there's obviously a symbiotic relationship between Grubb and Kalen DeBoer. And this isn't to say, I know what you were saying earlier, and it could be misconstrued as, well, DeBoer can't coach without Grubb. I don't think that's the case at all. I just feel like they have a great relationship. And there was a lot of learning curve last year for DeBoer. He also had to break in a new DC, a new OC, a bunch of new coaches, a bunch of new players, and a brand new conference. And a conference, by the way, which was brand new in its own right as they welcome in Texas and Oklahoma. So there was a lot of newness with a new playoff system. And DeBoer had to navigate all that. And 9-4 isn't what Alabama fans want. But I think in the end, this will turn out to be something that will work out very well for Alabama fans, meaning the Kalen DeBoer era. And I think Ryan Grubb's going to be a big part of that kicking off.
I'm glad you brought up that coaching change, because I think that kind of played itself out at the end of the season. New DC, co-OCs, lose your offensive line coach and OC. Because remember, it was supposed to be the entire staff is coming down, including Grubb and Huff, the offensive line coach, who also went out to the Seahawks, and then they jumped ship at the last possible moment. I think that's part, like that lack of continuity or certainty or understanding how everything operates, how you want things to go on game day. I'm not saying it's everything as to why it went wrong for Alabama in the last half of the season, but I've never seen a Kalen DeBoer offense with that level of talent struggle that much over the course of an entire season. Now, they weren't bad in every game, of course, but in those moments, the Oklahoma game and Michigan and the bowl game as well, I haven't seen that. So bringing in Grubb, I think absolutely raises the expectation back to Alabama being Alabama. Not guaranteed results. Nothing's ever guaranteed in college football. But we're always guaranteed to get Luke Robinson of Locked On Alabama when we need him. Appreciate it as always, Luke. Here's something I don't understand, guys. Ohio State won a national championship, and everyone said, bye, I don't want to be here anymore, I guess. First, a reminder, this episode brought to you by Game Time. Are you looking for tickets for your next big event, whether it's a concert, comedy show, or a sports game? Finding the right ticket at the right price can be a headache. But with Game Time Picks, it's never been easier. Let me tell you how it works. With Game Time Picks, the app does all the hard work for you. It curates the best deals so you don't have to waste time searching through endless ticket listings. I have used Game Time several times. And you know what? I'm not as technologically literate as you would think. But guess what? Game Time makes it easy to navigate. You can find great deals on whatever you're looking for. And the best part, you're covered with Game Time's lowest price guarantee. If you find a better deal somewhere else, they'll refund 110% of the difference. Plus, your tickets are guaranteed to be delivered on time with easy cancellation options if something comes up. Ready to make your next event even better? Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. What is going on in Columbus? Chip Kelly is gone. The offensive line coach is gone. Jim Knowles is gone. But Jay Stevens of Locked On Ohio State Buckeyes is still here. Are you the only one left, Jay?
I think so. I think I'm the only guy left, Spencer. It's wild times right now in Columbus, Ohio.
Just you and Ryan Day and Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate, and that's basically it. So, look, it's not uncommon for staffs that win a national championship to have their assistants be poached. But typically, Jay, those guys get poached for head coaching opportunities. Now, Chip Kelly going to the NFL, he will certainly see that as an upgrade. I came here for 1 year, accomplished what I was hoping to accomplish within a couple of years, and I always wanted to go back to the NFL. They tripled his salary. Okay, I get that one, I suppose, because he doesn't like recruiting. But then Knowles goes to Penn State. The offensive line coach isn't there. Like, is any of this concerning for the Buckeyes' outlook?
Not really. No, this shouldn't be concerning at all. Ohio State had the formula last year, and everything worked. You had Jim Knowles. You brought in Chip Kelly. You had some unfortunate things on the offensive line. They righted that ship, and they won the Natty. I think people care because of, well, the way, like Jim Knowles leaving, the way that happened, but I don't think people care. No. People think that this is going to happen, and Ryan Day will fix the things and get the hires correct. Sorry, Spence, my words are not working today. I'm not sure why. But I think Ryan Day is going to get these hires correct. And people have a faith right now in Ryan Day that he is going to do everything in his power, going to take his time to make sure he hires the right people.
Do you know what the great thing about being an anonymous internet commentator is, re the people that are in our comment sections every week, respectively, is those who for many years declared Ryan Day will never win the big one and can't win a national championship don't have to take any flack. Now, if I, for instance, on this show or another one that I host at this network, were to have stated that, well, Ryan Day's not going to ever win a national championship, he can't do this, I would then be reminded of that take after this past national championship. Now, I never felt that. But what I do see with Ryan Day now is he's getting tested like he never has before. There has not been an offseason where he loses his offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, and offensive line coach, and most of the team going into next season. Like, if Ohio State gets to the Big Ten championship game even in a year where I think Penn State's going to be really good, Oregon and Michigan, I have some questions, but they should at least be good. I think that would be another feather in his own cap to say to people, do you still think I can't coach?
No, you're correct, because he hasn't been there since 2020. Not only has he lost to Michigan 4 straight years, in those years, he has not been to the Big Ten title game. Now you're talking about winning it. He hasn't been to the game. So if he gets to that game this year, that's another reason for Ryan Day to say, keep talking about me. Keep telling me what I can't do, because all he's going to do is figure out ways to overcome these obstacles. I say that knowing he hasn't figured out the Michigan thing yet. He won that game with Urban Meyer's recruits in 2019. He hasn't won it since. That's the one obstacle that I think Ryan Day needs to get over. Absolutely has to get over. But If he gets over it in 2025, he's probably going to be in the Big Ten title game. There's a good possibility for them to win that game as well. I'm not going to say they will or will not. But Ryan Day is sitting here saying, keep talking about me. He's not that kind of coach to come out and point, unless it's Lou Holt. He doesn't really go out there and come at me, where's this guy? He does hear things, though. Coaches will say, we don't listen to stuff outside. We don't read stuff. We know coaches do that. And sometimes they show it in ways that are very calm and cool and collected. Other times they get it in the Lane Kiffin way or the Ryan Day after beating Notre Dame. Coaches hear stuff. And I hope, let's just say he gets to that Big Ten title game, Ryan Day comes out and starts saying, you guys keep talking about me, and I'm figuring stuff out. Let's keep in mind, Ryan Day's only been a college football head coach for 6 full seasons, going into his 7th. He's done a lot of things that guys never do in 20 years of coaching college football. So Ryan Day, in the very next year, let's say he does get back to the Big Ten championship game. Let's say he does win it. He's still doing things a lot of people never do. That's something everyone needs to keep in mind.
Does anyone actually care in Columbus? This is a legitimate question. I'm not being sarcastic. Does anyone care after he just won a national championship that he hasn't won a Big Ten title? The Michigan part, yes, I fully understand and appreciate why they care about that particular game. And that's the biggest thing left on his resume. And I'll share another thought on that in a moment. But with regards to the Big Ten championship, when you don't need that to win a national championship, does that even matter for the Buckeyes program anymore?
I think it matters because there's a trophy involved. There's a banner you put up. Like, I think for that stuff, it matters. Outside of that, Spencer, and I'm just saying that because it's stuff that is tangible. Not really. Nobody cared that they didn't make the title game, the Big Ten title game this year. People only cared about that Michigan loss. No one really complained about the Oregon loss. People complained about the Oregon loss, and it made them that loss made them nervous about what Ohio State would do in the playoff.
The Michigan loss.
Yes, Michigan loss. Nobody cared about not making the Big Ten title game. And let's keep in mind, every year Ohio State has 3 goals: beat Michigan, win the Big Ten title, win the national championship. Only 2 of those 3 things truly mattered this year: the Michigan game and the national championship game. Nobody cared about the Big Ten title stuff, which a year ago or 2 years ago would have been a big complaint. Some people probably would have started a petition to get Ryan Day up out of here because he can't beat Michigan, can't win the Big Ten. What are we doing? But now it's like we're in the playoff. 5 seed, 8 seed, don't matter. We're in that thing, and that is what we need to have a shot to win the national championship. No one even talked about the Big Ten title, which I didn't even think about that until you brought it up. Nobody cares, man. No one cares at all. I would love to go to the game. I would love to go to the game because I'm a fan.
Yeah.
But outside of that fandom stuff, beat Michigan, win the Natty. Big Ten title is now 3rd.
Yeah, I was at the Big Ten championship game. It was fun.
Yeah.
It was a good time. But guess what? I watched the green and yellow confetti come down for Oregon. They win it their first year in the league. It's a big statement, 13-0. It's the best regular season, they've ever had. And guess what? No one cares.
Mm-mm.
Like, it doesn't matter. Over on Locked On Ducks today, I compared Oregon to Rory McIlroy, that there's just a cloud. There's a cloud. Rory won at Pebble Beach on Sunday. Doesn't matter.
No.
It's not moving the needle. You could see it on Rory's face. He wants to win, of course. But in the he didn't have a moment where he sat there and took it in. He just picked his ball up out of the hole, smiled, went over to shake hands with the caddy, like, hey, this is great. But I could see in his eyes he knew, this isn't what I'm chasing. This is a stepping stone. This is a goal. Winning feels good. But at the end of the day, it's like, that's not the goal that we're after here. But here's the interesting thing with the Michigan game, Jay. It's gone against Ohio State 4 years in a row. And 1 year earlier, before the 12-team playoff arrives, Ryan Day might get fired. Instead, he wins the national championship. But when you win that title, I don't really care what rivalry you are not winning. He could lose it again next year. He'd still be the head coach.
You're correct. You
like that, right. And that's crazy. That's crazy. But that's what we've done with a 12-team playoff. That's what we've done here.
Well, it's weird because it used to be, like, up until recently, you had to win that game to have a shot to win the conference and to have a shot to win the national championship.
Mm-hmm.
You can lose that, not play the title game, and go on a miraculous run in the playoff and win the Natty. And it's like, okay, We lost that game November 30th. We won at the end of the day. Which was more important? There's a celebration, a massive celebration when you won the national championship. I have never seen Ohio State celebrate like they did after winning the Natty, after beating Michigan. There's always a massive celebration. The national championship celebration means a whole lot more. This is the world we're in right now. I know a lot of Ohio State fans are going to be like, Jay, you're crazy, man. You mean that game doesn't mean anything? No, it does mean a lot. Winning the national championship means a whole lot more than beating Michigan. This is what the 12-team playoff has done. Spencer and I know it's going to get to 14 or 16 teams in the playoff. We know
it will not stop until it hits at least 24.
I don't think it's right for that to happen at all.
Me neither.
But that's where we are. And actually, that's unfortunately for Ohio State fans, old heads, that's just going to diminish that game even more because all they're saying is you can just squeak your way on by. You can have 3 or 4 losses and get into the playoff. I think that's stupid. I don't think an 8-4 team should ever have shots to win the national championship, but that's where college football is right now. Sorry, I had to get that off my chest. I don't talk about expansion at all.
Oh no, trust me, you're preaching to the choir right here. You are preaching to the choir because I'm in the same boat. Have been for a long time. My everydayers here on the show are aware of it. Jay Stevens, Locked On Buckeyes, appreciate it as always, man. We're sticking in the Big Ten because Matt Rhule suggested something that sounded kind of crazy, and it's really not. Surprise, I brought Jay Stevens of Locked On Buckeyes back to talk about this because it's his conference too. So Matt Rhule of Nebraska said that the idea of canceling the Cornhuskers Spring Game is something they are considering because last year, after guys had good performances, he said players were tampered with and that's likely to continue. And allow me to lay out my thoughts here, Jay, and then I'll let you jump in. 2 things came into mind. First of all, this confirms things that I have said many a times in the past on this show, which is anytime a coach, a team, whoever is accused of tampering, I have no reaction to it because it is so prevalent, it is so widespread that there's no way I'm going to get mad that this team is doing it or that coach did it when I know that coach has probably done it himself. He just hasn't been outed or caught, or he could have technically violated the tampering rules. So that's the first part of it. The second part of it is it's unfortunate that we have this college football world, as Jay and I were discussing at the end of the last segment here on today's show, that has changed a lot of long-standing traditions in the sport. And one of those is that the Nebraska Spring Game and many others is usually a big showcase event that a lot of people go to. It's not that for everybody, but for a lot of people it is. And for people like us, we enjoy covering such things because it's semi-real football and it gives people a chance to get excited about the next season. But the idea that you would take away a tradition like that because you have unlimited and constant free agency in the sport is just an unfortunate reality of the world that we've created. That the college football powers that be have once again, surprise, surprise, gone forward and they have had actions that they didn't fully think about that continue to have ramifications that are harming the sport. I don't like the 12-team playoff. I never did, because it reduces the impact of a bunch of big regular season games. They're going to expand it to 14 one day. I believe they'll go to 24 one day, and you will have 9-3 and 8-4 teams getting in. We'll debate whether 7-5 Washington State or 8-4 Pitt should be getting into the college football playoff in a given year. And I think that because the FCS has, wait for it, 24 teams in its playoff. Someone will make that point. So I am not surprised that tampering is a problem for Nebraska or anybody else. And I am not surprised that because you have clowns driving the car here in college football, that you are once again threatening a sacred tradition in the sport, Jay.
I hate the thought that Matt Rhule is putting out there that the spring game might be canceled. I don't think it's been confirmed that it's going to be canceled yet, but the thought is out there, and Nebraska fans are going to be very, very upset, as they should be. It's a tradition. There are a lot of people that can go to spring games that are not financially able to go to a regular season game. And so you may get fans that drive 2 or maybe 3 or 4 hours to go to a practice, to see their favorite players play in a scrimmage for the first time in their life. they're buying all the jerseys and buying shirts and hats. Just try to remember that day. I understand what Matt Rhule is doing. Think about who their quarterback is. I know what his freshman season was, but there are going to be a lot of teams around the country, if Nebraska were to have a spring game, that watch that game, see how he grew from the end of the regular season until the springtime and say, oh, we can make him grow even more. We got receivers that he'll want to throw the ball to. And they're going to try to tamper like so many coaches do, or they'll use certain people that you wouldn't expect to tamper to contact that player to try to lure him in. I get it. I understand it. Spencer, it also sucks. We're both fans of college football. We both have been fans of our teams for a long time. Anytime you're taking something away from a fan because of something someone's doing that they shouldn't do, it's horrible. But that's what we're in right now in college football. Ryan Day's been preaching enforcement. Other coaches have been preaching enforcement. I don't think there's anybody that's going to try to enforce anything. And so Matt Rhule's having to make a decision. Do I allow people to get a look from my players in the spring, or do I take that away and reduce the risk of tampering? I understand why he wants to reduce it while also preparing for the 2025 season.
Yeah, I do as well. And with regards to a potential enforcement mechanism, I mean, you can want that all you want. You can hope, you can wish, you can dream. Who's doing it? The NCAA? I'm pretty sure we're 2 lawsuits away from that. We might even be less than that. Lawsuits away from the NCAA just ceasing to exist and conferences running the show, which in large part they already do. And here's why that would never work. And you would actually need it to be the NCAA to enforce these things, but I don't know that they're in a position to be able to sink their claws into college football right now, because they conceded power in the sport a long time ago, gave it to television networks and conferences, and they're the ones who actually run it. The entity that would enforce any sort of tampering violations or rules would be who? The conferences. Mm-hmm. But if this conference is going to their coaches and they're really, battening down the hatches and saying, you're not going to do this, you can't do that, there's a penalty, do you think that conference over there is going to not allow their coaches to go and try and create a competitive advantage for them? Because I imagine that won't make them very happy and will make them try to venture out of the conference. And you'll have, let's say the Big 12, this is just all hypothetical for the sake of argument. If Brett Yormark decides we are going to crack down on tampering, I don't want anyone doing it. If I hear about it, you're fined $1 million and you're going to be like, it's just, you're going to face a tidal wave of sanctions and whatnot. But Jim Phillips in the ACC, comparable league, says, yeah, no, we don't want you to tamper. But then on the down low, he's like, yeah, go ahead and do it. I'm not going to enforce any of these rules and whatnot. And he's going to be, the cool community facilitator or residential assistant, whatever you call it in college, in a dorm room. Then suddenly coaches are going to look at the ACC and go, I will leave my position here at insert Big 12 school to go be the head coach at Pitt or Duke or North Carolina, because over there I can tamper with kids. So there has to be an overarching body, the NCAA, that does it. But how much confidence do you have in that happening, Jay?
Not much. Not much at all. I don't really trust the conferences to police stuff either, as it says. Like Big Ten, SEC, I don't trust them at all. And it's weird that the conferences have so much power and there's a lot of stuff going on that shouldn't go on, but they allow it to go on because they're making a whole lot of money. And I know money drives decisions, and money is a big factor in a lot of the things going on with the playoff and with tampering and all that kind of stuff. It's just, I don't trust the NCAA. People got on Mark Emmert for the way he ran things, but I think it's worse now that he's no longer running the NCAA. So I'm like, you blame a guy and he's gone, and it's worse when he's not there. So maybe you should apologize to him and blame the new guy, but you're not going to blame the new guy because you don't want to blame two people. This whole thing is stupid. It's very, very stupid. I wish there was another body, or a body was made up to run college football. That's not the college football playoff. I think that would be absorbed into whatever body runs college football. They need to centralize the sport, centralize officiating, centralize rules, everything to make it more of a true unified sport. But Spencer, we're saying stuff that everyone's been saying for a long time.
Decades.
Nothing's changed. It's just gotten worse.
I'll end with this note of optimism on the sweeping changes that I and many others recognize need to come in the sport. How long did it take before an actual playoff arrived? And a lot of people for a very long time said there needs to be a playoff. They're on the broadcast of my favorite sporting event I have ever watched that didn't involve one of my own teams, Boise State, Oklahoma, Fiesta Bowl 2006. The broadcast crew is talking about the merits of a playoff, and shouldn't Boise State get a chance to play Ohio State or Florida or LSU or whoever else was at the top of the sport at that time? And it's an interesting back and forth, but here we are. We've got a playoff, so maybe things can change for the better. But the enforcement of tampering, tampering is such a big, dirty word, and it encompasses something as simple as sending a kid a text who's going to enter the portal, but the software hasn't run it through the system yet. That coach has now tampered. I'll just leave you with that as well. So if you'd like to think, oh, well, you just got to enforce how? What's the evidentiary standard for a coach tampered with you? A kid sending you a screenshot? Those things can be manipulated in the world of AI. So, yeah, nothing is easy except doing shows with my guy Jay Stevens, Locked On Buckeyes. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.